Almost 2 weeks ago, I made a video about all the music that came out during the period of the Monterey Pop Festival, the Summer of Love, Woodstock, that period from roughly 1966 to 1969. Got me thinking about a lot of the music of the 60s that I had in my record collection that wasn't in that video, and I'll explain why at the end of this particular video I'm doing. But I'm not going to start in 1966 with this one, because I'm going to start with an album, the one you see right here, that actually was part of what created, in a lot of ways, the music of the Summer of Love and the late 60s. This is the Rolling Stones' debut record from 1964. It's an American edition on London. It has England's newest hit makers on it. I believe it's actually a self-titled album in England. This album is mostly blues covers. A Mick Jagger and Keith Richards original, Tell Me, I believe, is the only original song on the album. And that's what it says. This is from my father's collection. It's a 54-year-old album, and it's something I cherish from my dad, and I wanted to thank him from the bottom of my heart for entrusting me, a man who has no organizational ability, but is his son, for entrusting his early 60s Rolling Stone records like this one to me. There's more Rolling Stone records he gave me, but I'll get into that in another video. James Brown, and I see a lot of James Brown albums like this show up in Maine, and the next two albums you're going to see are James Brown instrumental albums from the 1960s. This is from 1966. It's called James Brown Plays the New Breed. He recorded all his instrumental albums on the Smash label after 1963. And to give you an idea why that's important, he had two careers, vocal and instrumental. That's something a lot of artists don't have. But if you look at the top of this, I don't know if you can see this, full color portrait of James Brown, suitable for framing, included inside. Now, I got this in Portland at a shop called Enterprise Records. It was just like this. It wasn't shrink wrapped. And look what I found in it. The ultimate goodie. An autographed, frameable picture of James Brown from that era. I might frame that or keep that in the album. I'm not sure. That's kind of special to me. I don't know how to describe how special and meaningful that actually is. Here's another James Brown instrumental album. James Brown at the organ plays the real thing. There's the album you just saw in the back, actually. Let me take the Smash label out. I don't know if I've shown you what it looks like. I have another Smash album by James Brown, but to be honest, it's in really, really rough shape. And I'm not going to show it here because I just have the cover displayed. The vinyl's pretty unusable. Sergio Mendes and the Brazil 66. This is a group my mother introduced me to on A&M. They were a fairly early A&M band, actually. This is their album from 1967. The deep thing about them is they did pop Brazilian bossa nova covers of then popular songs that were really current at the time. This is from 67, and they do a version of Paul McCartney's Fool on the Hill. It had just come out, and their version came out. That's how deep this group were. There's the band at that time. There's Sergio. They were a great band. I really loved them. They epitomized the Brazilian end of the 60s, so well. Donovan, you saw another 1967 album from him in the last review we did, and this is Mellow Yellow, quite rightly. I've been looking all over for this on vinyl. It's in actually pretty good condition. There's Donovan. You all know what the 60s record label for Epic looks like. Rotary Connection, Cadet Contact. This album was recorded in Chicago and is a psychedelic group put together by Marshall Chess. You all know him. His father was Leonard Chess, along with his brother Phil were the masterminds behind Chess Records. But, you know, in 1966, Marshall formed this group in Chicago, and it featured and was produced by Charles Stepney, who also helped produce Ramsey Lewis and was one of the main masterminds behind Earth, Wind and Fire. This is a great psychedelic soul album featuring lead vocals by the late Minnie Riperton. I think you can see right there in the upper right-hand corner, I should say. And there's the Cadet Concept label. It's a little different. Looks a little like the label for Curton. This album is one that I also got very recently. Fresh Cream. My father talks about this album a lot. He actually has this. This is their debut, and this is actually a first pressing on the Atco label, which I've already shown, but I was really happy to find this album on vinyl. You can get it on CD pretty easy, and I don't mind that. I still might, but I just love the idea of having it on vinyl. So that covers 1967. And now we're on to 1968. I got this album for $1. I realize a lot of people think that by talking like that, it, you know, drives the prices up. But this is all about the 60s. Money's not all where it's at, so I got that for $1, you know. Great, great album by Harry Nilsson. One of the masters of Baroque pop. It's just RCA Victor from the late 60s. The label's no big deal. It's just a great record to have, especially for a $1 thing. Love Child. Okay, I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but I did not pay $1 for this, but it was the store, not the record. Anyway, this album, I didn't care how much it was. I just really wanted to have it. Just the Supremes, essentially, being a little more hood. You know, they showed the glamour of the hood. They still had their glamour. And they had Love Child. One of my favorite songs by the Supremes, and this is a wonderful album from 1968 on Motown. Some of their best material. A little change up for them. And this is the point they had just lost Flo Ballard, and they bought on Cindy Birdsong. It's the different Supremes. Spiral Staircase. You know, I heard this song for years, kind of a up-tempo soul pop thing, and I didn't figure the group that did it would look like this. I actually, you know, this was back when they got 50 Cent bin vinyl, and I got that there. It's in okay condition. The cover's a little beat up. There's been a reissue of their music on one CD since, but I really enjoy having that album. It's a good pop soul record, you know. I love it. Mary Hopkin, Postcard. Early Apple release. My father had this record. I'm going to take it out so you can see the Apple label here. There it is. Apple. Here's another A&M one. Quincy Jones, Walking in Space. This is a very, very special album. It has a gatefold, and it just has a little blurb on Quincy Jones. But I don't know if you can see all that down there. This album has Ross on Roland Kirk, and it has one of my main bass players. You know, so much so, as my friend Henry Hopkins reminds me all the time, is quite an unsung guy, even in the bass world. Chuck Rainey. He played on a lot of Aretha stuff. He is all over this album. This is Quincy going out to LA and establishing his little circle, his little musical circle. And he was doing songs from the musical Hair on this album, which epitomized the counterculture. And he was doing them in this big, epic, jazz, psychedelic arrangement. This is actually one of his most amazing albums, and I am proud to have it on anything, vinyl, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, those are my albums from the 60s that you didn't see in the last one. I think there may be some more from that era, but the 60s is a special time. I don't think we need to bring back everything that happened in the 60s musically, But that spirit of diversity and openness and not trying to make everything too overly authentic or therein conform. Just keep the doors open for soul, for folk, for rock, for what you please. Mix them up, do whatever you want. I've been trying to organize my records with my mom, actually helping me lately. It's been a chore. Shall we say we don't have the same methods at all for organizing them. And so there'll be more videos to come as the organization gradually gets complete. But I hope you enjoy this. Peace.